Well, it's absolutely essential that we change the Alberta Energy Regulator, and I'll tell you why I'm starting there. It's because in terms of policies that I would implement, they would fit into 3 categories. Number 1 is addressing the revenue problem that we have here in the province of Alberta. And in order to address that, we need to start talking about increasing the royalty regime as we move forward, but also getting rid of the flat tax, which no other jurisdiction across Canada has replicated. I think that it's really important that we have a system where people who aren't making as much money pay less in taxes, and those who are making more money off of the system or benefiting more from the system pay a little bit more. So that's number 1. Number 2 is actually training. Training is really important, and main focus on training would be making sure to invest that money into education, specifically education across the board, but specifically in post-secondary education. Because the people who are going to be taking care of us in terms of healthcare or social issues, whatever the case may be, those are the people that need to receive the training at that post-secondary level.
30 seconds.
And then the third element of policy would be making sure that we're not only consulting with people on a regular in an open way, but also having people who are working on the front lines being able to discuss what are the issues, what are the barriers and gaps in the system that they are encountering, and for them to come up with solutions for those gaps and those barriers so that we can then move forward as a province altogether. So no specific numbers for you, unfortunately.
Sure. Well, I think I want to start out with this statement. People often think, oh, you know, I love the NDP, but you know, they're great on healthcare and they're great on social policy, but you know, I just think they'll break the bank. So the first point that I want to make is that studies show twice in a row now, the federal parliamentary budget officer has concluded that over the last 25 years across the country, the government most likely to balance the budget and most equipped to balance the budget is in fact the NDP. Why? Because the record shows we're the ones most likely to balance budgets. And that's even blaming us for Bob Rae, which I don't think is fair. So the fact that we do balance budgets and we're responsible. So that's the first thing that needs to happen to stop this roller coaster. The second thing that we need to do is we need to address our tax structure. We need to eliminate the flat tax and return to a progressive tax. The other thing that we need to do is look at whether or not we need to maintain a 10% corporate tax rate when every other province in the country has a 12% or more a corporate tax rate. By looking at those two things together, we could generate a minimum of $2 billion extra a year. And we would do that and still maintain our position as the lowest tax jurisdiction in the country. So we would have the competitive advantage, but we would also bring more dollars in. Rod's also correct that we need to reevaluate our approach to royalties. A blue ribbon panel 5 or 6 years ago, staffed with Tory appointees, concluded that we were not getting our fair share and that we needed to do better. And then for political reasons, primarily backroom deals with their friends in the energy sector, that went nowhere. But we need to have a transparent, expert-informed discussion within this province about how best to get the benefits of the resources that we own. Finally, we need to look at the question of how we can, as owners of the resource, encourage more upgrading in the province in order to better diversify our economy, thereby increasing our tax base and resulting in greater sustainable economic or revenue growth. Now, you want details, but you're only giving me 2 minutes, so I think I've run out of time, but that's the short version of how we deal with that.
It's interesting. We've dealt with this question around the province, and in regards to the flat tax, it's interesting that we've been through this experiment of the flat tax for more than a decade, and as we've said before, no one else seems to be copying such a asinine idea. It's not even across the country or in any other jurisdiction in the modern industrialized world either. And so we know that the flat tax benefits people that are over $300,000 a year, even to the point where some people are taking up an address in Alberta and still living in Ontario, just like they've moved to the Channel Islands or Bahamas or something to pay the taxes here. So, I mean, that's not the kind of modern tax structure that we should have in the province. And really, middle income people end up paying more in terms of extra fees, and at a certain point, even in higher taxes than the people in upper incomes too. And so over $150,000, we would institute, I would begin to institute a progressive tax structure, which is a normal part, as I said, of a modern industrial society. We also know, Rachel pointed out that our corporate tax rates are lower than the North American standard. And again, you know, that race to the bottom for lower and lower tax rates, it doesn't pay out in development, right? Some of the lowest ones that we've seen for a long time in places like Mississippi and Arkansas, Louisiana, it didn't result in a big boom in those places. And we know that a reasonable tax structure that pays for the public services that people want to have is the best, most reasonable way to build and to move forward in our society. You want to diversify the economy, then you make sure that you have the education and health structure in place so that people will not just move to your place, but they'll stay there as well. As Peter Lougheed said before, right, I've always loved the quotatory, but he said, start acting like owners. And we have not been doing so for almost 20 years in this province. Ralph Klein and so forth, they've pulled the wool over our eyes. We're not getting the value of the natural resources that are owed to us, not just now, but for future generations as well. It's hardly responsible to pull out and rip and ship as much as you possibly can at the expense of not just now, but for future generations and the benefits that they should receive from that as well. Thank you.